while folks are joining, I'm going to just say welcome and do some brief remarks, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So thank you for joining. I am Katie Shorey, Startup Maine's president. We are excited to continue the series into 2021. Today is our 5th session of the Entrepreneurs and Ecosystem Builder series. And these, for those, if anyone's new, these virtual events feature thinkers and doers from across the state who are working on and building awesome companies and products, and also people who are helping to further develop our startup ecosystem. So today's event would not be possible without our sponsors, Bangor Savings Bank and Maine Technology Institute, as well as our business news sponsor, Maine Biz. And we are also proud to be supported by Maine Venture Fund. So a quick shout outs for our sponsors. For those who don't know, Maine Technology Institute was founded and funded in 1999 by the Maine State Legislature, and they offer grants and loans and equity investments and services to support Maine's innovation economy. They support new ideas, products, or methods with the potential to grow and diversify Maine's economy and increase the number of quality jobs throughout the state. And MTI also supports Maine's innovation economy through event sponsorships like this. So we thank them. They've been a supportive partner over the years. So to learn more and find out if you are eligible for their funding, visit mainetechnology.org. And we are also now supported by Maine Venture Fund. The mission of MVF, which Amy can tell you about a little later, is to provide resources to attract, support, and help develop eligible small businesses with the potential for substantial growth that will contribute to the prosperity of Maine. And they have been around since 1997 and have invested over $20 million in Maine companies. And then I'm just going to share a quick 30-second video from our sponsors, the Bangor Savings Bank, and then we're going to jump right in. So stay with me here.
All across New England, business owners are finding new ways to succeed. Families are working hard to provide for their loved ones and their future. It's the spirit of New Englanders that inspires all of us to do more. It's in our employees, our customers, and our communities. Every day we do more. Because at Bangor Savings Bank, we truly believe you matter more.
Love it. All right, I am excited to introduce you to today's guest, Amy VanHaren, the founder and CEO of pumpspotting. Pumpspotting at Work is a breastfeeding employer benefit solution that makes it easier for nursing moms to feed their babies and their careers. I'm so excited about this conversation, so welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Katie. I'm so excited to be here, part of this.
Yes, well, so tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so you said it very well. Essentially, I'm the founder of pumpspotting, and what we're doing is using technology to make it easier for parents to navigate breastfeeding and postpartum, and for employers to engage and retain their working parents, which is really important. And so, I think that we're really in the business of nourishment. And as I was thinking about preparing for this, I think that I've actually been focused on feeding people for much of my career. My background is in marketing. I've been doing marketing for over 20 years before I came to start pumpspotting, and the majority of my clients were in the food space. I worked for Stonyfield and Amy's Kitchen and helped launch Patagonia Provisions, the food line of that company. And I've worked with Allagash and Grandy Oats and a bunch of Maine companies. And so really focused on telling stories and building communities around them, especially in digital formats and in digital ways. But if you had told me that my own journey to nourish and feed my son would lead me on this quest to nourish so many others, and that I would be, the founder of a venture that was really focused on the first food that we all experience in life, I never would have believed it. But in some ways, maybe it's always kind of been leading me here. And the other thing I'll say is that I came to New England. I'm from Michigan. I came to New England for grad school at UNH. I got my MFA in creative writing at the University of New Hampshire. So I lived in Portsmouth, and then I fell in love with Kittery, and I moved over the bridge and never looked back. So now I'm a lifelong Mainer.
Now you're a Maynard. That's great. So tell us a bit more about pump spotting, because I think maybe when people hear, breastfeeding company, but it's also a tech company. So tell us how you saw the need for it, how it came about, and just a bit more about the company.
Yeah, well, feeding a baby is really hard, no matter how you do it, and especially while working. It's, a huge time commitment. There's a lot of things that go into it. It's emotional, the logistical challenges, the physical challenges, all those things. So what we're doing with pump spotting is we've really built a software and services platform that thinks about that entire journey. We think about from pregnancy through weaning and all those stages in between. What is it that parents need to really be able to reach their breastfeeding goals, whatever they might be, and how can they thrive as both parent and professional? And so with the technology, what we've built is a space that really it centralizes, it simplifies lactation and feeding support. We're offering employers an easy way to support their employees, to connect them to one another, and then to all these key support services. So whatever it is that parents need on this journey, whether that's connection to another mom who's in the midst of the same experience, or virtual feeding experts, or a place to nurse and pump in the workplace anywhere around the world. Or sometimes what's most important is just someone to say you're doing a great job at 3 a.m. when you've been up for hours and you're really losing your mind during this time period. And so I think we're just getting creative with how we can be very human-centric in our technology. How can we help employers to meet the regulations and parents' needs that work for them? And then how can we make parents feel less isolated, much more capable during this really vulnerable time period? And how it came to be is just, pump spotting was born of desperation and raw need and massive sleep exhaustion. It was my journey. I was trying to keep my marketing agency alive. It was very busy. I lived here in Maine. I was traveling to California every month. I had a brand new baby. So I was trying to keep this agency alive and trying to keep a baby alive. And both of those things are more than a full-time job. They're just both all consuming. And so I found myself in this kind of surreal phase of life where I was pumping all the time. I was either nursing or pumping or thinking about nursing and pumping. It was insane. I was pumping on airplanes between businessmen and in the back seats of Ubers between meetings and in bathroom stalls. And I was so consumed with it. It was a total mess. I was really overwhelmed. And the majority of what I felt was really alone. I felt isolated all the time. I was always alone in a pumping room, stepping away from something. I was alone, with my baby, but in the middle of the night. And I just felt this huge sense of isolation. And I remember sitting on a bathroom floor in the San Francisco airport and just kind of like hitting rock bottom and feeling as though I wanted to quit everything, the work, the baby, the entire experience. And I felt like I can't be the only woman in this world that's really feeling this way and going through this. And it's one of those things, I think, when you kind of open your mind up to something, you start seeing it everywhere. So then I started to see breastfeeding women all around me. They were, on my plane, in the coffee shop. My sister was pumping for triplets. And I felt compelled to find a way to connect us, that I felt as though, with my background that, in technology, we always had our phones in our hand, how much better I would feel during this time period if I was connected to others. And that was really the onus for pump spotting and where we started.
Wow. Great story. I really appreciate the backstory there. So we're going to jump into the need to shift and disrupt the work culture that we are in right now. So we'll go into that a little bit, but just so people know who are listening in, can you just share a little bit about, from your perspective, a day in the life of an entrepreneur? You wear so many hats. So just let us into what it looks like for you.
Yeah, I think I've joked before that I feel like running a startup is being a little bit like a seagull on a beach. There's like a crumb thrown over here and you run over here, and then there's a crumb over there and you run over there, and then someone, splashes in the water and you just like scatter until you can like catch your breath. And so that's often what my day feels like. I think for me, we're trying to land a new retail sales client. And so spending a lot of time around the pitch and the strategy and structure there. And then we're still fundraising. So creating a new investor pitch and investor updates, and then writing emails and Instagram posts and just the day-to-day connection with people. And then, Googling financial spreadsheets to see if there's a better way to kind of handle some of our B2B and B2C projections and thinking about that. And so it's just this constant shifting. And I think, I'm happiest when I'm able to fly, when I'm thinking about the big vision of where we're going, but so much of the day-to-day is just those small execution. And I think it's probably a superpower of mine, but all founders is I think you have to be able to really navigate that, the ability to really see the big vision and where you want to go, but then be able to live in kind of the small day-to-day. And the only other thing I'll say is that I've incorporated meditation into my day-to-day practice, and it's changed everything for me, especially during the stressful time of the pandemic. And so even before pitching or speaking a big meeting, I'll do alternate nostril breathing or just a moment of meditation. It sounds like such a small thing, but it has drastically changed the stress level and the nervous system, and I think allowed me to really show up in a better way. And so no matter the chaos at the beach, that's one thing I'm trying to keep constant.
Love it. I think you're the third founder who said that. So, okay, we're onto something here. So let's talk a bit about fundraising and the associated challenges with that. You're a female founder, you're running a breastfeeding company, you're in the femtech space. So talk about pitching and fundraising and being based out of the state of Maine. What is that like for you?
Yeah, well, I certainly didn't make it easy. I remember Lindsay, my partner and our software architect said to me at one point, she said, you're a female founder from the state of Maine, pitching a breastfeeding technology company. Did you think that this was going to be a walk in the park? Which is true. And in fact, my first pitch ever for pumpspotting was on reality TV, on a moving escalator in front of 4 very famous celebrities. And so talk about kind of jumping into the fire with this and what you're doing. So that was my first pitch, and we got rejected. Didn't go great, learned a lot, but I think the next morning after that rejection, we had an idea to set in motion that really changed the course of pumpspotting. And so one of the things I learned about fundraising early on is that even in the rejection, there's usually something to take away to build upon. And that for me has kind of been a centering piece of this journey, is every time I do it, what can I take away from it that helps me improve or think about it the next time? But I do think that as female founders, we're starting out further down the hill, but there's definitely a lot more road for us to climb up when we're trying to get funding and to get on board, or certainly that is, felt like my experience, even though in some ways I've had huge champions and it's been a good one, across the board. And we know in 2019, less than 3% of venture funding went to females, and COVID is just drastically increasing that discrepancy. The statistics that came in from the end of last year, I think funding to female founders is the lowest it's been in over 3 years. And so we, in some ways we're sort of stepping back, and it's been, I've felt it, I've seen it, it's been proven, the gender bias that happens in fundraising. And throughout this journey, the Harvard Business Review did a great study where they talk about prevention versus promotion questions, and how we as female founders might get asked something along the lines of, what are you going to do to make sure your competitors don't outpace you, versus tell me what you're excited about with your go-to-market strategy. And it's really getting us to a place of starting from defensive instead of, proactively being where you are. And, I felt that. I remember at one point I had an investor who ask me or say to me, what are you going to do so that we're confident you're committed to this business for the long term? And I remember thinking, like, in that moment, feeling as though, okay, now I'm defensive, because I had just finished telling the story about how, for research, I had lived on an RV and spent 5 months away from my family, traveling across the country. Like, to me, we were talking, like, there is no way that as a mother, I would leave my family just to step out the door the next day as we start this business building. But all of a sudden I was in a frame of mind where I had to reframe that question to make it positive and to really think about where we're going. And all of that work that I think we have to do as females to A, understand gender bias, and then B, work to kind of put ourselves in the best light over and over again in fundraising and in these conversations. There is a huge mental and emotional toll to that. And that to me is what I think has been the hardest is, I already had to learn term sheets and language and, you have to redo your pitch deck 100 million times. And there's so many things about financing and things like that you have to know inside and out about your company, and you have to learn. And then on top of that, sometimes it would be incredibly frustrating to say, now on top of that, I have to be prepared for when something comes my way to be able to, diffuse it or readjust it or what have you. And I found some amazing resources and champions to help me do that. But sometimes it's so exhausting. I would get to a point where just questioning everything, questioning, am I really able to do this? You've got so much coming at you. And I think every founder feels that. But for me, it felt like it was loaded even more so. And I think I remember one point I woke up and I thought, of course you're not going to invest in me, because in this broken down mental, emotional state, how can I possibly show up as my best self in order to pitch and what have you? And so I think those things certainly weighed on me more, and I've had to really work on them and try and get better and better every time and look for some great resources. One of the things I did, I got some great advice to build a personal advisory board. So I have a small circle of people who are excellent in business and personal, but their whole goal or reason to be in my life is for my mental health and not that of the business. And so I might call them and talk about business, but this second time around, with the second half of our round, I felt that has been incredibly beneficial to have these people to turn to. And yeah.
I love that, personal board of advisors. And I mean, we've talked about this I've heard, Sandy Stone, Susan Morris, Brian Walker talk about, yes, it shouldn't all be on you to have to know how to reframe and it's the investors that need to know that they have this bias as well, and that they're coming to the table, maybe asking a question this way when they should be asking it this way. So I think it's really important that you brought that up. Just real quick, I'm just curious about how you've approached investing. Have you worked with companies in Maine, out of state? Who have you utilized in the state?
Yeah, I mean, I feel so fortunate to have such champions and such connections here in Maine to be part of MVF's portfolio, and so much support and expertise from Joe and John and the Maine Angels team. Sandy, as you said, and Susan Morris, who's been a huge advocate. For me, I did it a bit backwards. I essentially went to I was part of Mass Challenge because we're a social impact company. So I did the accelerator there in Mass Challenge. And that's where I learned kind of everything I needed to know to start with about fundraising and where we wanted to grow the company. And so I started in Boston and found our amazing lead investors, Caitlin and Jess at Moody's, through that, and a few others. And once I felt really ready, then I went to Startup Maine with a mission. I was going to find Sandra Stone and I was going to make her my champion, and I was going to find everyone there. And so for me, I kind of prepared and got ready, and then did a lot of research about the crew in Maine, and then came here and have been fortunate to build the support system.
I love it. I love that you used our conference as a mechanism for achieving one of your goals. So that's great to hear. So on our prep call, we discussed the culture of work and family and women, and why there needs to be some massive changes. So what are you seeing in this space? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that tension between being a parent and a worker has always been something that has existed for parents, but I think this pandemic and this time period has really amplified it in a way we've never seen before. The work from home, just the amount of the lack of childcare, the lack of separation across the board, things have really shifted for working parents and especially for working mothers. And I think we're seeing a monstrous impact across the board in terms of mental health, in terms of the exodus of women in the workplace. I mean, they're deeming it a she session because there are so many women that are leaving the workforce. A study just came out that said, in December, of the 140,000 jobs that were all women. 100% of them were women. And I think they estimate over 2 million mothers have left the workforce during this time period. And, 1 in 4 are thinking about leaving. I could go on and on. The truth is like parents are really struggling, this constant shift between having to do it all, the childcare, the house care, the workplace, it's just too much. It's just a huge strain. And I think that's always been true, but this time period has really brought it to the forefront in a way we haven't seen. Family benefits is one of the fastest growing trends at companies right now, and rightfully so, because parents have this hierarchy of needs. They need leave, they need parental leave, they need childcare support, they need breastfeeding support physically as they're navigating it, and they need mental health. And those things really need to be honored and built into the fiber of what we're doing in the workplace for anyone to be able to bring their best self to both work and home. And I think the dialogue is just changing a great deal around that. We just hosted a working parent talk circle at a company, and there was a woman there who described it so well. She said, as parents, we're always holding a deck of cards, and you might be like, everyone's healthy, we've got childcare, I've got a supportive manager, but at any moment that deck is shuffled. And in the pandemic, it's being shuffled day to day. Now someone's sick. Now you lost your childcare. The workplace support is different. And going from stable to crisis mode, it's just that no one can sustain that. And I think that's why people are quitting across the board. And so it's a real interesting time for us to revisit the value of working parents and think about how we build cultures and support systems around their journey.
Yes. So when you're talking with some of these companies or trying to get them to come on board, are there certain types that are more receptive to working with you? Do you see that the education is needed? Like some companies aren't even realizing that this is a huge need, and you're trying to bring it to the forefront. What are those conversations like?
Yeah, I think it really runs the gamut. I think you've got companies that are very progressive and very female focused, and they think about, family benefits more broadly, and they're open to the conversation. They're coming with some sense of need. You've got employers, I think, who are in crisis. They've either had employees vocalize, like, we have no space and time to breastfeed. We're, like, you better make a change or we're not. Disruption will occur. And so there's some people in that. There's some who are curious. They're just starting to have some of these conversations. But there is a huge education and learning curve. And I think when I think about the future and what we're trying to do with these working parent talk circles and opening that up, is this needs to be a time of listening. Like, employers really need to hear, because what we see frequently is companies may think they've checked those boxes around support, but they don't really understand what it is that's needed. And sometimes the shifts are really small. For example, if you are an employer and you send out a memo around something that says effective immediately, you will send your working parents into a tailspin. Where if you change the language just slightly to be more, human centered, to say, effective as soon as plausible or possible, or something that makes them feel like, great, I know I need to do this, but you understand the situation we're coming from. And I think that's the conversations we're trying to have around breastfeeding is, what can we do, knowing that we've spent all these years with close to 50,000 parents at this point. How can we take that beautiful wealth of learning and insight and open up that conversation for employers, so that they not only know what they need, but then take the next step in terms of working with us and others to really change things.
Yes. For those listening, if you do have a question, you can drop it in the Q&A. And if we have time, I'll get to it. Otherwise, Amy will let us know the best way to contact her at the end of the session. But we only have 6 minutes left, so a few more things to cover. So I guess when we think about the future of work and how it's changing, and hopefully employers can be the big driver behind this, I want to know what you're most excited about. I want to know what you're most excited about on that front, and then we can talk about some things that, like, what you're also most excited about happening in Maine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a total optimist. I really am, and to me, what I'm excited about is that this movement is really starting to take shape. That I know it's really hard right now, and we're seeing it, but the conversations have escalated in this way that's really magical, and it's very community centric. I think not only are our parents really vocalizing what they need and talking to one another, but employers and companies, we're starting to have a new discourse around this, and that excites me. And it excites me to be a vital part of forwarding that change in the state of Maine and really everywhere. I really, I feel most fulfilled when I can see the way we are allowing someone to feel more capable and confident. And that's not just moms, but for companies to change things. And I'm also excited that I don't think this change isn't just about big companies or corporate offices or what have you. It's all of us. I mean, we are a team of 7, and our head of marketing is just back from her maternity leave, and she's breastfeeding on Zoom calls and, you know, showing up as part of it as she is. And Lindsay, who's my partner and our software architect, just had a baby, so she's snuggling and sending messages about you know, texting. And so one of the things that I'm most excited is we're not only trying to build a world that really allows parents to feed their family and career, but we're also role modeling how it can be done, even at a small startup, to really make this a priority and something that's valuable.
That's great. Actually, that was one of the questions that somebody asked. They said, how is Amy implementing her ideas about working mothers and parents in general at your firm? So it sounds like you're really walking the walk. Is there anything else you want to add there about how you're implementing this?
No, I would just say, you know, we're 95% working parents. And so first of all, we come to work with empathy. Second of all, we allow parents to really bring their whole selves to work, and we encourage it, you know, in meetings. Lisa on my team is, you know, probably pumped the most times in meetings with me of anyone I know, and we love it and we welcome it. So
great. So this is more a question about your product. Does a woman have to be with an employer who is working with you to get access to the app and the benefits that you are providing?
That's a great question. And the answer is no. We've created pumpspotting so you can get access and you can be part of it in 2 ways, either directly, if you're a mom that needs it, or through employers. And then we're expanding through partners. So pumpspotting.com is where everyone can learn more and find out how to join the community in the space.
Great. And if people want to reach out to you, is there a best way to do that? Email, LinkedIn, what do you prefer?
All of the above. I'm Amy at pumpspotting.com, and I love to hear from people.
Great. So I guess when we think about there's a lot, you're part of the startup world in Maine. And I know that you speak with a lot of different founders and get together and have conversation. What are some other big ideas that you'd like to see happen? It could be in the state, how, just in terms of like how things are communicating, the types of funding. So what do you, specific to Maine, what are some big things that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I don't know that my idea is, you know, giant or big. I really hope we continue to really nourish the female population of founders here in Maine. I know that there are, through the portfolio companies and all that we've been part of, I definitely have met so many amazing female founders, but I think we could really raise that balance so that there's more seats at the table and more conversation around that. And I think that we just need to keep getting people on board, especially investors and people who are really interested in standing with female founders and opening more doors here in the state and more broadly. And I think the more we come together, the more we can change things in bigger ways.
Very, another question here. From the lens of future of work, do you see the lactation consultant role change for the better through the work that you're doing at pumpspotting?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's happening with lactation consultants is they used to just be where in the beginning it was very much moms went there when they were in crisis, and now I think we're starting to think of how lactation consultants are being incorporated into the whole journey because they're so valuable. There is so much to connecting with someone for reassurance, for just information along the way. You know, it's not just in that moment in the hospital. It's not just when you're back to work. It's really having access to someone who has that holistic sense of how your body's changing in your relationship. And so we've got a lot of interesting things brewing with how we can really work with both sides to build deeper connections and really help moms expand.
Excellent. So I want to thank you for your time. I can't believe how quick that went. It's already 9 o'clock. I feel like we could have spoken a lot longer and I had so many more questions. So I just want to thank you, Amy, for your time today and all the work that you're doing. It's so inspiring and it's going to be game changing. So thanks for everyone listening in and thanks for your time, Amy.
Thanks, Katie. So happy to be here.